Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. The National Register of Citizens, or NRC, is the list of Indian citizens in Assam. It was prepared in 1951 following the census of 1951. And the list is now being updated for the first time since 1951 to identify illegal migration into Assam. The NRC is being updated under the monitoring of the Supreme Court, and the final list is scheduled to be released on the 31st of July. Ahead of the deadline, more than 1 lakh people have been excluded from the draft National Register of Citizens in Assam after they were found ineligible. State coordinator of NRC said they were declared ineligible during the process of verification, which was carried out by the local Registrars of Citizens registration. In last year's draft published on the 30th of July, 2.89 crore of the 3.29 crore applicants were included, leaving out more than 40 lakh people. Today in Depth, we try and understand in detail the process of update of NRC, the reasons why more than 1 lakh people have been left out of Assam NRC additional draft exclusion list, and what happens to them now. So ahead of the final National Register of Citizens list to be published on 31st of July this year, an additional draft exclusion list was published on Wednesday, and as many as 1.02 lakh people have been excluded from the NRC draft in Assam. This list includes the names of those who were a part of the final draft NRC published in July last year but have been subsequently found ineligible for inclusion. People whose names have been excluded from the additional list will now be eligible to file claims, for which hearings will start from the 5th of July.
Assam has published a fresh exclusion list with an additional 1 lakh names to be removed from the National Register for Citizens. The draft exclusion list, published on 26 June 2019, has names of 1,02,462 people. The names were initially included in the draft National Register of Citizens, published on 30th July 2018, but was subsequently found ineligible. The draft published on 30th July 2018 included 2.9 crore people out of total applications of 3.29 crore. 40 lakh people were left out in the draft. Those who were excluded were given a chance to appeal in the claims and objections round. After this, nearly 36 lakh persons filed their claims for re-verification. According to a statement issued by the state coordinator of NRC, this additional list was published under Clause 5 of the Scheduled to Citizenship Rules 2003.
The NRC has been drafted because of the court order, and it has been taken after the Supreme Court's order. It was mainly done to identify the foreigners who have been, because there is a buzz there is a talk about in Assam particularly that a lot of foreigners have entered Assam, and that really shifted the demography of the state. And there was this whole process going on for a long time. In fact, Assam went through a severe agitation during the 80s against the foreigners, mostly who are from Bangladesh. So there has been a demand of the people, and that's how the process came in. And the one particular group called Assam Public Work, they went to the court and wanted some sort of demanded NRC, and that's how NRC has been ordered by the Supreme Court, and now it has been implemented. We have already seen the final the draft NRC is already there, and we expect by 31st of July the final list should come out in Assam.
The additional exclusion list includes persons found ineligible on grounds of being declared foreigners or doubtful voters, or persons with cases pending at foreigners' tribunals. The names of persons found to be ineligible while appearing as witnesses in hearings held for disposal of claims and objections were also a part of the exclusion list. People found ineligible during the verification carried out by the local registrars of citizens' registration under provisions of Clause 4.3 after publication of complete draft NRC on 30th July 2018. The exclusion list doesn't contain results of claimants appearing for hearings held to dispose of objections from 15th February to 26 June. About 3.29 crore people had applied for inclusion of names in the NRC and 2.9 crore were found eligible. Details of those excluded have been made available on the NRC's website, and they will also be informed through letters. These will be delivered to their residential address along with the reason for exclusion, the date and venue of the hearing through which the person concerned can file for inclusion. Those excluded will be eligible to file claims, for which hearing will start from 5th July this year. The hearings will also be available online on the NRC website www.nrcassam.nic.in from 29th June 2019 onwards. Besides, the exclusion list has also been put up at NRC Seva Kendras, offices of Deputy Commissioners, Sub-Divisional Officers Civil and Circle Officers. All such claims will be disposed thereafter, and results of such people will be declared in the final NRC on 31st July 2019.
Especially the people their name has been excluded, they really have to appeal to the tribunal, and the tribunal have to solve the whole then they have to appeal, and the tribunal will give the verdict, and once if they prove that they are citizen of India, they will be again included.
NRC is a register containing names of all genuine Indian citizens. The NRC is working to make a list of bona fide Indian citizens of Assam based on the cut-off date of 25th March 1971. The list is being updated for the first time since 1951 to identify illegal migrants in Assam. The NRC is being updated under the monitoring of the Supreme Court, and the final list is slated to be released on 31st July. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Migration of outsiders into Assam has a long history. Initially, people from neighboring states came to the state in search of work. But the illegal influx of Bangladeshis over decades now assumes political significance. Let's first look into the issue of illegal immigration and what led to the formation of the National Register of Citizens of India. And for this, we also have to understand the agitation in the 1970s and the subsequent socio-political environment in the state of Assam.
In the northeast, Assam has seen a strong anti-outsider sentiment for more than 50 years now. The British encouraged migration of thousands of people from Bihar to work on the tea plantations in the state. Further, hundreds of thousands of Bengali peasants also settled on the vast uncultivated tracts of the state. The second important event that led to the problem was the partition and the birth of Pakistan in 1947. Partition triggered a large-scale influx of refugees from erstwhile East Bangladesh into Assam, West Bengal and Tripura. In 1971, after the Pakistani crackdown in East Bengal, over 1 million refugees sought shelter in Assam. Most of them went back after the creation of Bangladesh, but nearly 1 lakh people stayed back. After 1971, Assam saw a fresh, continuous and large-scale influx of land-hungry Bangladeshi peasants. By now, habitable land was becoming scarce in Assam. Assamese peasants and tribals started fearing loss of their holdings. However, this demographic transformation generated a feeling of linguistic, cultural and political insecurity. It overwhelmed the Assamese and imparted a strong emotional content to their movement against illegal migrants in the 80s. Assuming a dominant role in Assam's politics by the end of 1979, the All Assam Students' Union and the Assam Gana Sangram Parishad, a coalition of regional political, literary and cultural associations, started a massive anti-illegal migration movement. Leaders of the movement claimed the number of illegal migrants was as high as 31 to 34% of the state's total population. The state's large-scale population boycotted the 1983 assembly elections as well. The polls were held against the backdrop of a statewide student-led agitation against illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. In fact, during the general elections in 1984, elections in 14 parliamentary constituencies of the state were not held due to ongoing fighting. Strikes and satyagraha continued to be observed until the then central government eventually called the leaders for a final negotiation in mid-1984. The 18-month negotiation between the leaders of the Assam Movement and the Rajiv Gandhi government led to the signing of the Assam Accord on 15th August 1985. The voter list was fully corrected on the basis of this agreement. The state legislature that had been constituted on the basis of the 1983 elections was prematurely dissolved. In the assembly elections in December 1985, the newly formed Assam Gana Parishad came to power, securing a simple majority. Prafulla Kumar Mahanta, who was the party president, took oath as the new chief minister of Assam. Although the accord brought an end to the agitation, some of the key clauses were yet to be implemented, which has kept some of the issues festering. But in the meantime, there were also insurgency movements in the state for separate statehood, such as that for Bodoland. For several years, the matter was put into cold storage and the movement once again started in 2005. The then Congress government in Assam started working under pressure, but action was very slow. Finally, in October 2013, the Supreme Court ordered that the upgradation of the National Register of Citizens of Assam should be completed by January 31st, 2016. But the NRC authority could not comply with the date. Since then, the Supreme Court has been keeping an eye on the process directly. In fact, the government had to release both drafts of the NRC under pressure from the Supreme Court. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And let's now understand the need for NRC, which was first prepared in 1951.
The first census of independent India was conducted in 1951. Based on it, the National Register of Citizens was prepared, which recorded the particulars of those who belonged to Assam. This list was compiled with data from each village, mentioning details of the houses or holdings in a serial order and indicating against each house or holding the number and names of persons staying there at that time. These registers were kept in the offices of deputy commissioners and sub-divisional officers, but in the 1960s, they were handed to the police department. The 1951 NRC was compiled exclusively for Assam on the basis of fears expressed by Assamese nationalist leaders who feared a post-partition conspiracy by Pakistan to effect a demographic change in Assam. The state, however, witnessed a steady influx of migrants even during British rule between 1826 to 1947. During the mid-19th century, the British brought in migrant workers from the adjoining areas, which include present-day states of West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh to work in the tea plantations in Assam. However, after 1951, the NRC was never updated. Although, with the increasing influx of migrants from Bangladesh and neighbouring areas, the government felt the need to update the NRC.
See, first NRC was prepared in Assam in 1951. And because I think it was the thought of the leaders that time, because Assam bordering with Bangladesh, I mean that time it was Pakistan, that time also there was a infiltration. So, the leaders that time thought, why not maintain a list, a register of citizens of Assam. That is how 1951 NRC was prepared. But NRC after that was never updated. If you recall early 80s when there was Assam agitation, which ended with the Assam Accord in 1985, a clause of the accord was that it had 4 Ds on the foreigners, that detection, deportation and deletion of such illegal migrants' name from the electorals. But having signed in 1985, it was never implemented. Every time there was a agitation, demand from the students to fulfill the Assam Accord, but it was not done. Finally, in 2005 again, there was a tripartite agreement between the centre and the Assam Students Union and state government, that agreeing to update the NRC. That remained only on paper. Even then it was not, the process never started. In 2006, one gentleman from Assam, he knocked the door of Supreme Court, and finally in 2015 the Supreme Court, under its own guidance, started the NRC process to update the register which Assam had made of its citizens in 1951.
The NRC is being updated as per the provisions of the Citizenship Act 1955 and the Citizenship Registration of Citizens and Issue of National Identity Cards Rules 2003. The eligibility for inclusion in updated NRC is being determined on the basis of NRC 1951 and electoral rolls up to the midnight of 24th March 1971. In the absence of electoral rolls, other documents up to 24th March 1971 midnight can also be submitted, like land and tenancy records, citizenship certificates, permanent residential certificates and passports. In case of an applicant born after 1971, documents pertaining to one's ancestors, namely father, mother and so on, can also be submitted. Additionally, documents proving the relationship, such as a birth certificate or land documents, will also have to be attached.
15. The Supreme Court, under its own guidance, started the NRC process to update the register which Assam had made of its citizens in 1951. That is how the NRC process started. And in this process, 6.5 crore documents were filed by the 68.27 lakh families. And for NRC, the cutoff date, which is again part of the Assam Accord, is March 24, 1971. Means anybody who has entered Assam before this date can be considered as a citizen of Assam and Indian national. Whereas the cutoff date for in rest of the country continues to be 1948.
Another act that needs mention in relation to citizenship in Assam is the Illegal Migrants Determination by Tribunal Act 1983. Also called the IMDT Act, it was enacted to swiftly determine illegal migrants. It was applicable only to Assam. According to the Act, illegal migrants were those who entered India on or after 25th March 1971 without being in possession of a valid passport or other travel documents or any other legal authority. However, the law evoked controversy because in all other states, detection of foreigners was done under the Foreigners Act 1946. Besides, under the IMDT Act, the onus of proving one's nationality or otherwise lay on the complainant, whereas under the Foreigners Act, the onus is on the accused. The IMDT law noted that though inquiries were initiated in 3,10,759 cases under the IMDT Act, only 10,015 persons were declared illegal migrants and only 1,481 illegal migrants were physically expelled up to 30th April 2000. That is why the protest started in Assam. When the matter was discussed in the Supreme Court, the Apex Court in 2005 struck down the Illegal Migrants Act as unconstitutional. The Supreme Court said that IMDT Act has created the biggest hurdle and is the main impediment or barrier in the identification and deportation of illegal migrants. The Supreme Court directed that all the tribunals constituted under the IMDT Act would cease to function with immediate effect as the Parent Act has been declared unconstitutional. Cases pending before the tribunals would stand transferred to tribunals under the Foreigners Act. The then UPA government suffered a setback, with the Apex Court declaring the controversial Foreigners Tribunals for Assam Order 2006 as illegal and unconstitutional. Soon after the Supreme Court order, in 2014, the process of updating NRC in Assam began. To execute the process, 2,500 NRC Seva Kendra were built in the state. Each Seva Kendra had at least 10 villages. Legacy data was published after scrutinizing all the documents between 27 February 2015 and August 31, 2015. During this stage, application forms were distributed. 31st of August 2015 was the last date for submission of application. Examinations of these applications began on the 1st of September. Once the process was over, the first draft of the NRC was released on the midnight of 31st December 2017. The first draft included 1 crore 9 lakh people out of a total applicant pool of 3 crore 29 lakh people, whereas more than 1 crore 25 lakh people were not registered. Last draft of the NRC was released on the 30th of July 2018. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Assam Accord is in many ways similar to the NRC, as both are aimed at addressing the issue of illegal immigrants in the state. Here's a look at the Assam Accord of 1985, which was signed after 6 long years of agitation against illegal immigrants.
The Assam Movement was an agitation against illegal immigrants in the state and to protect economic, cultural and ethical identity of the native residents of Assam. The movement, led by All Assam Students Union and the All Assam Gan Sangram Parishad, lasted for 6 long years between 1979 and 1985. It was marked by protests to compel the Indian government to identify and expel immigrants who were mostly Bangladeshis. The agitation ended in August 1985 after the Assam Accord was signed by the leaders of Assam Movement and the government in the presence of then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. The Assam Accord brought an end to the agitation and paved the way for leaders of the agitation to form a political party, the Assam Gan Parishad, that came to power in assembly elections of 1985. The Assam Accord aimed at providing legislative and administrative safeguards to protect the cultural, social and linguistic identity and heritage of the Assamese people. The Assam Accord promised detecting and deporting foreign immigrants in Assam, regularizing all people who came to Assam before January 1, 1966, including those whose names appeared on the electoral rolls used in 1967 elections. Detection of foreigners who came to Assam after 1 January 1966 and up to 24 March 1971 in accordance with the provisions of the Foreigners Act 1946 and the Foreigners Tribunals Order 1964. Names of foreigners so detected to be deleted from the electoral rolls in force. All such persons were required to register themselves before the registration officers of the respective districts in accordance with the provisions of the Registration of Foreigners Act 1939 and the Registration of Foreigners Rules 1939. The government assured that it will suitably strengthen the governmental machinery for the purpose. The accord provided for restoring the names of people in the electoral rolls on the expiry of 10 years following the date of detection. All persons who were expelled earlier but later re-entered illegally into Assam to be expelled. The accord said all foreigners who came to Assam on or after March 25, 1971 shall continue to be detected, deleted and expelled in accordance with law. The government also assured of giving due consideration to difficulties regarding the implementation of the Illegal Migrants Determination by Tribunals Act 1983.
The root lies in that tripartite agreement which is known as Assam Accord of 1985, because when that agreement happened there was demand that the issue of foreigner will be resolved, and they wanted some sort of safeguards, and that's how the stock was there, how to solve it, and government tried to bring in various mechanism like we have seen the Foreigners Tribunal and all, but those were not really very effective. So one way, if you really tell me, so the root of that whole NRC or the protection of the indigenous people are looking into, it has roots there.
Clauses 6th and 7th of the Assam Accord speak of safeguards and economic development of Assam. Clause 6 provides for constitutional, legislative and administrative safeguards to protect, preserve and promote the cultural, social, linguistic identity and heritage of the Assamese people. While in Clause 7th, the government renews their commitment for the speedy, all-round economic development of Assam with special emphasis on the education and science and technology through establishment of national institutions. The government also announced a special package for economic development of Assam. For this, the government decided to set up oil refinery, paper mills and technology institute in the state. The centre also decided to make special laws and undertake administrative measures to protect the cultural, social and linguistic identity of Assamese-speaking people. After the Assam Accord, it was decided that only the central government officials will issue citizenship certificates. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And that's it from us in today's edition of In Depth. We'll be back same time tomorrow with a focus on some other subject. In fact, you can also watch our program online on YouTube and Twitter. And don't forget to send your feedback and suggestions about our program. Thank you for your time.